showing, what were they doing? Were they putting birds on the moon? No. They'll understand that we were saying symbolically they had the power of flight. So it's just a very interesting thing that when we look at the artifacts left to us by these cultures and start to realize, yes, they were witnessing things happening in their time when beings visiting them had the power of flight. But they didn't understand technology, and so they just assumed that they were their gods. And for all rights and purposes, as Zecharia Sitchin's research has shown us, that missing link came from the Anunnaki. So in a sense, they are our gods, but gods with a small g. Basically just using some of their own genetic material and the pre-hominoid man that existed here naturally to create us in their image and after their likeness, just like the Bible says. So very interestingly, we have many artifacts from this culture. And again, I mentioned earlier, one of the forms of this was a cylinder seal. This little round stone object you see was basically another thing that baffled scholars. Sumerians were able to reverse carve these pictures so that you could roll out over wet clay the cylinder seal and get a positive imprint. It's kind of like a modern day printing press, so they could easily disseminate these clay tablets through the city. Here's another depiction of their gods, the Anunnaki. Again, having the power of flight, they depicted them with wings. You can look at the aesthetics and some of the things. If you look right where the wings crest over his shoulder, you can see he's got some type of knives or some type of tools tucked into his pouch. You can see he's holding some type of an object, holding some type of a purse around his wrist. Looks like to either be a decorative band or could possibly be even a watch. I mean, again, the Sumerians depicting a wrist, some type of thing around the wrist, they're not going to understand what the device was for. They're just depicting what it was. But we see it clearly displayed. Again, the wrist, all of them having this some type of an object. Now, whether, again, that was a decorative gear or some type of technology, when we look at the references the ancients are giving us, wings, headdress, look at their demeanor, they're well groomed. So it's just very interesting that they're depicting their living gods as being amongst them and actually saying, wow, you know, they had the power to do these things, and the only way we can describe these pictorially is to give references of the things we see in nature. So another beautiful wall relief that just shows the detail in their design of creating, you know, wall reliefs, the color, the intricacy of what they're showing. It's just amazing. Another cylinder seal reference. This is actually Inanna, as I showed an artifact a few slides back. This is just a cylinder seal that, when rolled out, shows the positive imprint. Very interesting. And again, you know, not being a Sumerian linguist, Zecharia Sitchin's work has been very crucial in understanding some of these key pieces for putting it into a larger context, what was going on. Many archaeologists and scholars today, linguists, will just translate this part of the information, this one stellar, this one artifact. Zecharia Sitchin was one of the very few to put all of the information into a context and give it an overall view and understanding for what it all means. Another depiction, one of my favorites, very clear, concise, showing a humanoid Anunnaki somehow having the power of flight, and how else to depict it with wings. So where is heaven? This is where the information starts to focus specifically on where do the Anunnaki come from. They weren't just floating down from the sky. Very specifically, the Sumerians said the Anunnaki came from another planet within our solar system, and they called this planet Nibiru. Nibiru stood for Planet of the Crossing. So they actually gave a visual depiction of Nibiru as a cross, a glowing cross in the sky. Now there are many depictions from the Sumerian artifacts. Here's a cylinder seal, two of them. If you look closely enough, on the larger far right-hand bottom one, you see a seated king, and above him to the left is a cross in the sky. That was a symbol of Nibiru. Another reference. Basically here on the top left, this was during daylight hours, some farmers plowing. Again, the Sumerians were the first ones to have a plow, agriculture. They're noticing in awe, during daylight, a glowing cross in the sky. So this symbol of Nibiru actually transcribed into the Egyptian culture and later Assyrian cultures, and that's why we see in wall reliefs in Iraq and Iran, still to this day, this winged disc, this depiction of the winged disc, even in Egyptian cultures, the sun god Ra is a winged disc. This all comes from the Sumerian information of the Anunnaki. So again, more information that they had was very extensive astronomical information, where they depicted all of the planets that we have in our solar system. However, they depicted an additional planet, this Nibiru. So, very interesting. They showed the distance between the planets and gave symbols for the planets. Here, what we're seeing in this artifact, I know it's kind of jarbled, there's a lot of stuff going on, but if you look, you can see the winged disc. You can see it clearly on the left and somewhat on the right. And next to it are 7 dots, which actually represent the 7 dots of Earth. Now you'd say, 7 dots of Earth, what's that mean? Well, interestingly enough, the Sumerians counted our solar system as having 12 members. And they counted the solar system from coming outside the solar system in. So they didn't say we were on the 3rd rock from the sun, like that cool hip phrase used in the TV show. They counted from coming outside of our solar system in. Now, if you look at the diagram here, coming from outside in, Nibiru, and then you'd have Pluto, Neptune, Uranus, Saturn, Jupiter, Mars, Earth, the 7th planet. Now, they counted Nibiru as the 12th planet because they counted the 9 planets we know of, our sun making 10, our moon making 11, and Nibiru the 12th. So just again showing, coming from outside of our solar system in, they gave us the label of being, you're on the 7th planet. Now again, the sacred number 7, 7 days in a week, 7 days of creation, the 7 tablets of creation. The Sumerians actually have 7 tablets that tell the creation story. Not 7 days and it was all done, the English version. No, they have a very detailed, it's called the Enuma Elish. And on 7 of the tablets, it very specifically explains how our solar system came about, how our planets formed, and very specifically how life formed on Earth. So the Sumerians bequeathed the knowledge to us that we are actually on the 7th planet. Here's another Sumerian artifact. Not really sure what the reference to it other than what it's showing. I thought it was interesting. This was a press that they would press in, and it shows the cross of Nibiru with its crescent moon, the 7 dots of Earth, and our crescent moon. Very interesting. And just real quickly, I'll pause to say, you'll notice that there are some buttons under the list of people here that say speaker frame or your frame. If at any time you'd like to go back and look at some of the frames I've discussed as I'm continuing on, you can do that. If you want to take a moment and look at something, go back on your own and look at it, you can do that. And then just hit sync to come up back to where we are. Okay, so another artifact again. These artifacts that I'm showing you are all stored in the British Museum and are on display for everyone to see. And clearly here, this cylinder seal, when rolled out, again shows a reference to the winged disk of Nibiru and the 7 dots of Earth. So some more interesting aspects of the knowledge is that they showed in one of the depictions a very clear depiction of our solar system. Now this one has become quite a famous tablet because here it is, just very simply, it's what's happening here is there's an Anunnaki granting man the plow, modern agriculture. But as a backdrop to the cylinder seal, we see our complete solar system with the sun correctly placed in the center. Now, since the time of Copernicus and Galileo, man thought that Earth was the center of the universe. And through the time and advances in telescope and astronomy, we realized, we actually orbit the sun. Well, the Sumerians knew that thousands of years ago and left it depicted in stone, unchanged, as their reference, showing that they knew. So here is a very interesting artifact that's been translated by Zecharia Sitchin. Now, many of the scholars would say that the ancient man wasn't familiar with the shape of an ellipse, a wheel, or a circle. Well, here you go. Here's a stone tablet they were using an ellipse for writing. This one specific area of the writing, you can see it was a badly damaged tablet, but this one specific area, when enlarged, as explained and translated by Zecharia Sitchin, tells us something very interesting. Here we have a tablet telling of how the Anunnaki, what route they took to get from Nibiru, the vicinity of the solar system of where Nibiru was, to us. And you can see the translation clearly from Zecharia Sitchin explains, along the side it says